Wisdom in Buddhism. The purpose of Buddhism is to eliminate suffering and bring joy to all beings. But only those with wisdom can know the path that leads to peace and happiness. The purpose of Buddhism is liberation and enlightenment, and only wisdom is the sole means to bring humanity to the shore of liberation and enlightenment. Therefore, the role of the wise person and the role of wisdom hold a key position in all the teachings of our Buddha. And we can say that Buddhism is the path of the wise, the path of insight, to find a satisfactory definition for Buddhism, distinguishing intellectual knowledge and wisdom. First, we should distinguish between a person with intellectual knowledge, as commonly understood, and a person with wisdom, as defined in Buddhism. A person with intellectual knowledge may have profound knowledge about a certain issue, can analyze and present that issue clearly and thoroughly, but that person only has knowledge without practice, and they can still be influenced by that issue, not being free. Example of intellectual knowledge ***. For instance, a person may understand a lot about alcohol, knowing what ingredients it contains and how it affects the body. That person is called someone with intellectual knowledge about alcohol, but they still drink alcohol, still get drunk, and are still controlled by alcohol. Thus, that person does not yet have wisdom about alcohol. Example of wisdom ***. On the other hand, a person who clearly understands what alcohol is, knows well its dangers, and has the ability not to be controlled by alcohol, does not drink alcohol, does not become addicted to alcohol, does not get drunk, and transcends the control of alcohol. Such a person is considered to have wisdom about alcohol. A question ***. Someone asks, if there's a person who does not have intellectual knowledge about alcohol but does not drink alcohol, is that person considered to have wisdom? Of course not. That person still enjoys the benefits of not drinking alcohol, such as not getting drunk and not becoming addicted due to their behavior of not drinking. But it is very possible that in a particular situation, due to the lack of ability to resist the temptation of alcohol, that person starts drinking, leading to getting drunk and becoming addicted. With this distinction, we can understand the definition of a wise person as broadly defined by the Buddha in his teachings. This distinction helps us recognize two types of people often found among Buddhists. 1. The learned but unpracticed. One type is very learned in Buddhism, knows a lot about the scriptures, but is still not considered wise. This type is quite common among scholars who purely study Buddhism, are profound in the three baskets of teachings, both the original and developed, but only study without practice. They may talk well about meditation, but do not meditate. Present beautifully about the wonderful uses of wisdom, but do not develop wisdom. Thus, they cannot be called wise. 2. The faithful but unwise. Another type has sincere faith, practices according to the precepts in Buddhism, but only his faith has not transformed faith into wisdom. So they cannot be considered wise either, because they can still be influenced by greed, hatred, and delusion, and therefore are not yet considered wise. #######wisdom as conscience. However, the wise person is mentioned a lot in his teachings, and the wise person here is described as a kind of conscience that helps us distinguish between right and wrong, good and evil, pure and impure, happiness and suffering, superior and inferior. The important thing is that wisdom here is no longer a rare, unique characteristic, but becomes a kind of conscience always present in us, acting like a lamp illuminating us to know how to distinguish and choose between good and evil, between right and wrong, enabling us to recognize what should be done and what should not be done, so that we can guide ourselves towards peace and liberation. This wonderful function is skillfully described by our Buddha in terms of the characteristics, attitudes, and actions of two types of people, called the foolish and the wise. When reading the passages that describe the foolish and the wise, our conscience becomes vivid, helping us clearly understand what is good and what is not good for ourselves and others. #######teachings from the Anguttara Nikaya. In the Anguttara Nikaya, it clearly states the vast difference between the foolish and the wise. The foolish, endowed with three things. The foolish are known. What are the three? Evil deeds with the body, evil speech with the mouth, evil thoughts with the mind. The wise, endowed with three things. The wise are known. What are the three? Good deeds with the body, good speech with the mouth, good thoughts with the mind. In the same sense, the Buddha added, whatever fear arises, O monks, All that fear arises from the foolish, not from the wise. Whatever dangers arise, all those dangers arise from the foolish, not from the wise. Whatever calamities arise, all those calamities arise from the foolish, not from the wise. Thus, the foolish have fear, the wise do not have fear. The foolish have dangers, the wise do not have dangers. The foolish have calamities, the wise do not have calamities. O monks! There is no fear that comes to the wise, no danger that comes to the wise, no calamity that comes to the wise. This is a very clear confirmation of the difference between the foolish and the wise from the perspective of an enlightened being. Hashtag reaction to painful feelings. Another clear difference between the foolish and the wise is in their reaction to feelings. The foolish, when experiencing physical pain, often grieve, lament, cry, beat their chest, and become unconscious. The Buddha compares this to a person falling into an abyss, not standing on the shore, not reaching a safe foothold. The wise, when experiencing physical pain, do not grieve, do not lament, do not cry, do not beat their chest, do not become unconscious. Thus, the Buddha teaches that such a person is called a noble disciple who has heard much, standing on the shore of the abyss, has reached a safe foothold. The Master further said, the foolish person with little learning, when experiencing painful feelings, grieves, laments, becomes unconscious. Thus, there are two types of feelings, physical feelings and mental feelings. The Buddha compares this to a person being shot by 2 arrows, suffering both physically and mentally. Further behavior of the foolish. Furthermore, the foolish person with little learning, when experiencing painful feelings, feels anger, so the latent tendency of anger exists and increases. They seek escape from painful feelings by delighting in sensual pleasures, because they do not find any other escape. Due to delighting in sensual pleasures, the latent tendency of greed for pleasant feelings exists and increases. They do not truly know the arising, cessation, gratification, danger, and escape from those feelings. Therefore, the latent tendency of ignorance regarding neither painful nor pleasant feelings exists and increases. Thus, whether they experience painful feelings, pleasant feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, they experience them as one who is bound. Here, the Buddha teaches, the foolish person with little learning is bound by birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I say that such a person is bound by suffering, behavior of the wise, As to the noble disciple who has heard much, when experiencing painful feelings, they do not grieve, lament, cry, beat their chest, or become unconscious. They only experience one feeling, that is, the physical feeling, not the mental feeling. The Buddha compares this to a person being shot by 1 arrow, suffering only physically, not mentally. Furthermore, the noble disciple who has heard much, when experiencing painful feelings, does not feel anger, so the latent tendency of anger does not exist and increase. They find escape from painful feelings beyond sensual pleasures. They do not delight in sensual pleasures, so the latent tendency of greed for pleasant feelings does not exist and does not increase. They truly know with wisdom the arising, cessation, gratification, danger, and escape from those feelings. Therefore, the latent tendency of ignorance regarding neither painful nor pleasant feelings does not exist and does not increase. Thus, that noble disciple who has heard much experiences painful feelings, pleasant feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings without being bound. Here, the Buddha teaches, the noble disciple who has heard much is not bound by birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I say that such a person is not bound by suffering, Hashtag ignorance and craving. When asked about the difference between the foolish and the wise regarding bodies obscured by ignorance, bound by craving, giving rise to the view that there is this body, there is name and form outside. Due to this body, there are 6 sense bases and feelings of pleasure and pain. What is the difference between the wise and the foolish? The Buddha said, O monks, obscure by ignorance, bound by craving, this body of the foolish person arises. That ignorance, the foolish do not eradicate. That craving, the foolish do not eliminate. Why? O monks, The foolish live the holy life not for the true cessation of suffering. Therefore, when the body breaks up at death, they go into another body. They are not free from birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I say that they are not free from suffering. And O monks, obscured by ignorance, bound by craving, the body of the wise person arises. That ignorance, the wise eradicate. That craving, the wise eliminate. Why? O monks, the wise live the holy life for the true cessation of suffering. Therefore, when the body breaks up at death, they do not go to another body. They are liberated from birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I say that they are free from suffering. Hashtag subtle distinctions. Another subtle distinction is that the wise prefer silence like the great ocean, like something full, like a pond full of water, while the foolish are noisy like a mountain stream, like something empty, like a jar with water. A verse illustrates this. Learn from the waters. The water in mountain streams flows noisily from deep mountain gorges. The great ocean is full and silent. What is empty makes a loud noise. The foolish are like a jar with water. What is full is silent. The wise are like a full pond. Someone asked, why do the wise, living a holy life in the deep forest, eating one meal a day, have a wonderful complexion, while the foolish wither like green reeds cut from a stem? The Buddha replied with a verse, always living in the forest and mountains, the sage live the holy life, eating one meal a day. Why is their complexion wonderful? They do not lament the past, do not long for the future, live in the present. Therefore, their complexion is wonderful. Because of longing for the future, because of lamenting the past, the foolish wither, like green reeds cut from the stem. Hashtag further differences in verses. Some more differences between the foolish and the wise are skillfully described in the following verses. Regarding heedfulness, the foolish lack wisdom, live a life of heedlessness. The wise are not heedless. Like guarding precious wealth, the wise eliminate heedlessness. With the virtue of heedfulness, climb the high tower of wisdom. Without sorrow, looking at the sorrowful, the wise stand on the high mountain, looking at the foolish on the plain. Attitude towards life. Come and see this life. Like a splendid royal chariot, only the foolish are attached. The wise are not infatuated. A fine line. There are many differences between the wise and the foolish, differing only by a hair's breadth. Advancing becomes foolish. Stopping is wise. The fool who thinks they are foolish thus becomes wise. The fool who thinks they are wise is truly called the utmost fool. Attitude toward the Dhamma. The fool, even for a whole life, associates with the wise, does not know the Dhamma, like a spoon with the taste of soup. The wise, even for a moment, associates with the wise, immediately knows the true wonderful Dhamma, like the tongue with the taste of soup. Here, we have seen why the foolish often distort the teachings of the Buddha, while the wise always maintain a correct attitude, faithful to his teachings. O monks, there are two types of people who distort the Tathagata. What are the two? The person who claims that the Tathagata said and taught what he did not say and teach, and the person who claims that the Tathagata did not say and teach what he did say and teach. O monks, there are two types of people who do not distort the Tathagata. What are the two? The person who claims that the Tathagata said and taught what he did say and teach, and the person who claims that the Tathagata did not say and teach what he did not say and teach. Both types of people do not distort the Tathagata. Hashtag defining wisdom in Buddhism. When we understand the definition of a wise person through some teachings of the Buddha, we now have the ability to present the basic definitions of wisdom in Buddhism and capacity of wisdom to lead to enlightenment and liberation. Basic definition. What is called wisdom? Because there is knowing with wisdom. Because there is knowing with wisdom, it is called wisdom. What is knowing with wisdom? Knowing with wisdom here is suffering. Knowing with wisdom here is the origin of suffering. Knowing with wisdom here is the cessation of suffering. Knowing with wisdom here is a path leading to the cessation of suffering. Because of knowing with wisdom, it is called wisdom. Thus, wisdom is knowing with wisdom, knowing the fact, knowing the arising of the fact, knowing the cessation of the fact, knowing the path leading to the cessation of the fact. Expanding this definition is knowing with wisdom the gratification, knowing with wisdom the danger, and knowing with wisdom the escape from phenomena, and therefore in general. There are 7 areas that need to be known with wisdom for any phenomenon or any fact, whether good or bad. Example with desire. For example, taking desire as the object, one must know with wisdom desire, the arising of desire, the cessation of desire, the path leading to the cessation of desire, the gratification of desire, the danger of desire, and the escape from desire. Knowing thus is called knowing with wisdom. Power of wisdom. What is the power of wisdom? Here, the noble disciple as wisdom achieves wisdom regarding arising and ceasing, with the penetration of the noble path leading to the cessation of suffering. The technical Pali term is Ariyaya Nibbidikeya Sama Dukkhakiyagaminiya. Here, the word Nibbidikeya has 2 translations. 1. Penetration, delving deeply into the path capable of ceasing suffering, that is, capable of liberating from suffering. 2. Capable of piercing to the taints of desire, becoming in ignorance or greed, hatred, and delusion, to finally cease suffering. Thus, wisdom, besides the ability to know with wisdom the arising and ceasing, also has the ability to pierce through ignorance to finally achieve liberation. Functions of wisdom. Wisdom means superior knowledge, means complete understanding, means eradication. Thus, wisdom has the ability of superior knowledge, that is, knowing through meditation, and this meditation is the 4th immovable concentration. It also has the ability of complete understanding with thorough and perfect knowledge. And finally, it has the ability to eradicate the taints, the taint of desire, the taint of becoming, the taint of ignorance, to eliminate greed, hatred, and delusion, to end suffering. Hashtag types of knowing. For greater clarity, we need to distinguish between knowing through perception, knowing through consciousness, knowing through mind. These are the 3 ordinary ways of knowing the world that lead to knowledge in science, technology, philosophy, scholarship, etc. Buddhism contributes superior knowledge and knowing with wisdom, knowing through meditation, creating the necessary strength for humans to master themselves and their circumstances. Knowing with wisdom leads to a comprehensive, perfect understanding, capable of piercing to ignorance, eradicating greed, hatred, and delusion, leading to the end of suffering. Hashtag wisdom as a means to liberation. But wisdom is not the ultimate goal. It is only the means to liberation. With such wisdom, one becomes disenchanted, detached from craving, ceases, abandons, and finally achieves liberation, following the process. Due to disenchantment, there is detachment from craving. Due to detachment from craving, there is liberation. In liberation, knowledge arises that I am liberated. One knows birth is ended. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more returning to this state. Thus, the role of wisdom is to select objects for contemplation, to know them with wisdom, and through knowing with wisdom, to become disenchanted, detached from craving, cease, abandon, and finally achieve liberation. The objects are many, depending on the chosen method, depending on the practitioner's capacity. But even if the objects differ, the method of practice differs. The process of liberation can be considered the same or nearly the same. Hashtag processes of liberation from the Pali Canon. Here are some processes of liberation, quoted from the Pali Canon, illustrating the role of wisdom in leading to liberation and knowledge. Snake, simile sutta, alligator sutta *. The object to be contemplated with wisdom is the 5 aggregates of clinging: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. Whatever 5 aggregates of clinging, past, present, future, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all 5 aggregates of clinging must be contemplated with wisdom. This is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. Through such contemplation with wisdom, the learned noble disciple becomes disenchanted with form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. Through disenchantment, they become detached from craving. Through detachment from craving, they are liberated. In liberation, there arises a knowledge. I am liberated. They know birth is ended. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more returning to this state. Great Mahaparinibbana Sutta. The object to be contemplated with wisdom is suffering and the taints. The practitioner must know with wisdom, this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is a cessation of suffering. This is a path leading to the cessation of suffering. These are the taints. This is the arising of the taints. This is a cessation of the taints. This is a path leading to the cessation of the taints. Through such knowing with wisdom, through such understanding, their mind is liberated from the taint of desire, liberated from the taint of becoming, liberated from the taint of ignorance. With regard to themselves thus liberated, there arises a knowledge. I am liberated. They know. Asterisk birth is ended. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more future life. Asterisk. Sepasava Sutta. The object to be contemplated with wisdom is views. Okunda, these types of views arise in the world, either related to self-theory or related to world theory, where these views are latent and where these views are active, only by truly contemplating them with wisdom that this is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. Thus, there's elimination of those views, there's a relinquishment of those views. Alagaddapama Sutta, another section. The chosen object is proliferating thoughts. Asterisk, O monks, due to whatever cause, if some proliferating thoughts obsess a person, if there is nothing to delight in, nothing to welcome, nothing to cling to, then that is a cessation of the latent tendency of greed, the cessation of the latent tendency of hatred, the cessation of the latent tendency of views, the cessation of the latent tendency of joy, the cessation of the latent tendency of conceit, the cessation of the latent tendency of craving, for becoming, the cessation of the latent tendency of ignorance, the cessation of taking up sticks, taking up views, fighting, quarreling, disputing, resisting, divisive speech, false speech. Right there, these evil, unwholesome states are destroyed without remainder. Asterisk. Dvedavataka Sutta. The Buddha recounted his experience before enlightenment, how he used unwholesome thoughts and wholesome thoughts to practice morality, concentration, wisdom, ultimately leading to liberation and enlightenment. He divided thoughts into two types. Unwholesome thoughts, thoughts of desire, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harm. Wholesome thoughts, thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, thoughts of non-harm. When thoughts of desire, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harm arise, the Bodhisattva knew with wisdom, these unwholesome thoughts arise in me, and these unwholesome thoughts lead to self-harm, lead to harm of others, lead to harm of both, destroy wisdom, are part of affliction, do not lead to nibbana. When the Bodhisattva reflected thus, those unwholesome thoughts disappeared, and the Bodhisattva continued to abandon, eliminate, and cease the arising of unwholesome thoughts. When thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, thoughts of non-harm arise, the Bodhisattva knew with wisdom, these wholesome thoughts arise in me, and these wholesome thoughts do not lead to self-harm, do not lead to harm of others, do not lead to harm of both, increase wisdom, are not part of affliction, lead to nibbana. If at night I think about thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, thoughts of non-harm, not because of that cause, I see fear. If during the day I think, reflect on thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, thoughts of non-harm, not because of that cause, I see fear. And if I think, reflect too much, my body may become tired. When the body is tired, the mind is disturbed. When the mind is disturbed, the mind is far from concentration. Then, from within, I calm the mind, quiet the mind, make it one-pointed, make it concentrated. With such a concentrated mind, the Bodhisattva abandoned the 5 hindrances, attained the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, attained the knowledge of past lives, the divine eye, the knowledge of the destruction of the taints, and finally achieved liberation and enlightenment, dependent origination and wisdom. Now, We will discuss dependent origination to explain the role of wisdom, taking a human being as the object for contemplation with wisdom, and from here, find both the formula leading to the presence of the human being and the arising of the entire 5 aggregates of clinging, and the formula of dependent cessation, leading to the end of birth and death and the entire 5 aggregates of clinging, as described in the Mahanidana Sutta. Presence of a being. First, the Buddha raises the issue of the presence of a human being. This presence takes the 4 nutriments as a cause, as the origin, as the source, as the existence. And when these 4 nutriments are ceased, the presence of this being also ends. Tracing conditions, the being has the 4 nutriments as its origin. Craving is feeling as its origin. Feeling as contact as its origin. Contact has the 6 sense bases as its origin. The 6 sense bases of name and form as their origin. Name and form has consciousness as its origin. Consciousness has formations as its origin. Formations have ignorance as their origin. Dependent origination formula. Thus, dependent on ignorance, there are formations. Dependent on formations, there is consciousness. Dependent on consciousness, there is name and form. Dependent on name and form, there are the 6 sense bases. Dependent on the 6 sense bases, there is contact. Dependent on contact, there is feeling. Dependent on feeling, there is craving. Dependent on craving, there is clinging. Dependent on clinging, there is becoming. Dependent on becoming, there is birth. Dependent on birth, there is aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus is the arising of the entire mass of suffering. Thus, because of birth, there is aging and death. Because of becoming, there is birth. Because of clinging, there is becoming. Because of craving, there is clinging. Because of feeling, there is craving. Because of contact, there is feeling. Because of the 6 sense bases, there is contact. Because of name and form, there are the 6 sense bases. Because of consciousness, there is name and form. Because of formations, there is consciousness. Because of ignorance, there are formations. Thus, the Buddha confirms the conditional arising of the entire mass of suffering. That is, the human being with a formula. When this exists, that exists. When this arises, that arises. Dependent cessation. From the principle of dependent arising, the Buddha proceeds to the principle of dependent cessation. Because of the complete cessation and abandonment of ignorance, formations cease. Because of the cessation of formations, consciousness ceases. Because of the cessation of consciousness, name and form ceases. Because of the cessation of name and form, the 6 sense bases cease. Because of the cessation of the 6 sense bases, contact ceases. Because of the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. Because of the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. Because of the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. Because of the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. Because of the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. Because of cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Thus is the cessation of the entire mass of suffering. Thus, because of the cessation of birth, aging and death cease. Because of the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. Because of the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. Because of the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. Because of the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. Because of the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. Because of the cessation of the 6 sense bases, contact ceases. Because of the cessation of name and form, the 6 sense bases cease. Because of the cessation of consciousness, name and form ceases. Because of the cessation of formations, consciousness ceases. Because of cessation of ignorance, formation cease. Thus, the Buddha confirms dependent cessation with a formula. When this does not exist, that does not exist. When this ceases, that ceases. The practitioner's wisdom. The practitioner, with wisdom, knows both the formula of dependent arising and dependent cessation. So after observing the precepts, after attaining the 4 jhanas, when the 6 senses contact the 6 objects, they do not crave for the 6 desirable or undesirable objects. They live with mindfulness established on the body, with an immeasurable mind. They truly know with wisdom the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, through which unwholesome states are completely eliminated. Thus, they abandon attraction and aversion. Whatever feeling arises, they do not delight in it, do not welcome it, do not cling to it, because they do not delight, do not welcome, do not cling. If there is any delight in feelings, that delight is eliminated without remainder. because their delight ceases, clinging ceases. Because clinging ceases, becoming ceases. Because becoming ceases, birth ceases. Because birth ceases, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Thus is a cessation of the entire mass of suffering. Hashtag summary of wisdom's role. Thus, with different objects such as the five aggregates, suffering and the taints, views, proliferating thoughts, unwholesome and wholesome thoughts, dependent origination, wisdom plays a key role in the responsibility of knowing with wisdom the objects, understanding completely the objects, and finally eradicating the taints to attain arahantship. Hashtag verses from the Pali Canon. To further clarify the definition and role of wisdom, we record here some teachings of the Buddha quoted from the Pali Canon to prove the above explanations. All formations are impermanent. With wisdom, one contemplates thus. Suffering is disenchanted. This is the path to purity. All formations are suffering. With wisdom, one contemplates thus. Suffering is disenchanted. This is the path to purity. All phenomena are without self. With wisdom, one contemplates thus. Suffering is disenchanted. This is the path to purity. Seeing suffering in the origin of suffering. Seeing the transcendence of suffering. Seeing the noble eightfold path, leading to the end of suffering. The physical eye, the divine eye, the unsurpassed eye of wisdom, all three types of eyes, have been declared and explained by the unsurpassed person. From here, wisdom arises. The eye of wisdom is supreme. Whoever attains that eye is liberated from all suffering.